Hello and welcome to Forward Boldly. I'm your host, Christine Niles. Thank you so much for joining me again. Glad to be with all of you. Remember that you can write me with any of your suggestions, topics, questions, comments at forwardboldly@churchmilitant.com. That is forwardboldly@churchmilitant.com. I always enjoy hearing from you. I can't guarantee a response to everyone, but I do try to read your messages. It is time for Catholics to wise up. It's time for Catholics to start getting smarter. Scripture tells us, be cunning as serpents, innocent as doves, but too often it's the other way around. Too often we're innocent as serpents and cunning as doves. That's not a compliment. Catholics, we just need to start doing better at things. What does that mean? Well, some recent examples I'm going to go into that highlight the rush to judgment that many Catholics exhibit, and how easily we're duped by initial impressions or wishful thinking or wild speculation. I'm going to get into all of that in this episode, but just a reminder for all the men out there, I encourage you to please attend our Strength and Honor Men's Retreat this August. It's a time for men of all ages, young and old, to get together and strengthen one another in the faith, in living out your faith in an authentically masculine way. Speakers will be Michael Voris, Simon Rafe, and Jesse Romero. Just go to our website to sign up. That is churchmilitant.com/strength-honor. In the news recently, as many of you know, is the war between Bishop Michael Olson of Fort Worth, Texas, and a group of traditionalist Carmelite nuns. Now, this first sort of came to national attention because Bishop Olson issued a statement saying that Mother Teresa Agnes was guilty of violating the sixth commandment with a priest outside the diocese, an unnamed priest outside the diocese. Now, breaking the sixth commandment essentially means that you engaged in some sort of inappropriate relationship, whether it's sexual, romantic, whatever it might be. Now, the nuns hit back by filing a lawsuit, a civil lawsuit, as well as a canonical lawsuit against the bishop. In their civil lawsuit, initially, they claimed that he essentially violated his authority and his power as bishop by coming to the convent and using very strong-arm bullying tactics, questioning Mother Teresa Agnes after she'd just gotten out of surgery and was still sort of very not clear thinking, and that he somehow extracted some confession from her during this time when she was still on anesthesia and just wasn't thinking clearly. And so she denied through her attorney that she had engaged in any sort of wrongdoing. And the lawsuit claims that Bishop Olson's actions traumatized the nuns. That's the language that he used, that it traumatized the nuns because of his strong arm bullying tactics, that he seized her phone and laptop and various equipment, things like that. Made him out to be just a terrifying bully. Now, Bishop Olson came back and once again confirmed that, yes, she did indeed admit that she violated the sixth commandment with an unnamed priest. And we, on the panel of the download, weighed in, not taking any sides, just looking at everything objectively and sort of weighing in and giving our opinions of the case, not knowing everything going on and just trying to take a very measured, cautious approach to everything. And so I, as well as my panelist on that particular episode, David Gordon, both of us are licensed attorneys, and we sort of weighed in on the civil lawsuit. Here's a little clip of some of what we said.
So what is the insinuation that this bishop just has it in for the sacred liturgy, that he just doesn't want them to have daily mass? It makes sense until you find out what's gone wrong, where we have a consecrated person accused of having sexual liaisons with a priest. I think it's fair to be like, we're going to pull back until we see if there's some odd libidinous culture that's,
He launched an investigation confiscating her phone and everything that was part of that investigation, probably to see if there were text messages and conversations with this particular priest. I would think, now I have not had a chance to look at the legal filings, so I don't know all the ins and outs and exactly what the claims are, but it doesn't sound to me like she's suing him for defamation, which is exactly what I would do if the story was not true at all. That's the very first thing I would do, is I would sue the pants off of you for defamation. And it was so interesting, the reaction that we got to our measured and very cautious commentary on that. We got a lot of backlash from Catholics. Catholics were not happy. They were not happy that we took the views that we did. They thought that we were throwing the nuns under the bus. They thought that we were taking the side of the bishop, which we were not. We were simply just, just trying to take an objective and measured approach to all this. But the backlash from people saying, oh, how could you throw the nuns under the bus? And this is a terrible episode. And how could you say that? And why wouldn't you support the nuns 100%? And clearly Bishop Olson is bullying them into being horrible and terrible and blah, blah. All right. First of all, I am the first one to say that Bishop Olson of Fort Worth is an extremely problematic bishop. And we went over that in that particular episode of The Download. We went over all the problems with Bishop Olson. In fact, my very first spotlight that I did was devoted to Bishop Olson. It was titled Unfit for Office. So I, above all people, understand Bishop Olson is an extremely problematic bishop for many, many, many different reasons. Least of all, because he told someone that he wanted to torture and murder a priest that he hated. So, there are problems with this man. We had multiple witnesses, multiple people from the Diocese of Fort Worth speak to me. I interview them in that particular spotlight, confirming that Bishop Olson is a bully. He's a bully. He's temperamental. He's got a temper. He's heavy-handed, all of that. Having said that, though, that does not necessarily mean that what he says about the nuns and what's going on with the nuns is 100% false. Very first thing that caught my attention with the civil lawsuit is the nuns did not initially sue for defamation. If I was being accused of sexual impropriety by my bishop with a priest, okay, in a public statement read by thousands and thousands of Catholics, if I was being falsely accused of that, the very first thing I would do is I would sue for defamation. I would sue for defamation. I wouldn't sue for the other stuff that they sued for. It would be defamation first thing, and they didn't do that. So that immediately made me wonder, what's going on here? Why wouldn't you sue for defamation? Sure, maybe you denied it through your attorney, but you didn't sue for defamation, even though he apparently is smearing your reputation. Now, they have since added that later on, some weeks later, but that was my first thing. And then Bishop Olson drops a bombshell that there were drugs. They found drugs, illegal drugs inside the convent. And he published a photo of one room, allegedly one room in the convent that is absolutely littered with all sorts of drug paraphernalia, bongs, edible marijuana, pills, all sorts of illegal drug paraphernalia. And how did the convent respond to its attorney? It claims that the picture was that they were framed or that it was a setup, that it was planted. Now, they did not deny that the picture was taken inside their convent. They didn't deny that. What they denied was that it was theirs, claiming that it was planted. It was planted by this insider, this informant who sent the image to the bishop. Now, the bishop came out with a video statement having to deal with all of the backlash and all of the rumors. Let's take a look.
I was told in April that the prioress, Mother Teresa Agnes Gerlach, had admitted to my Vicar General, Father Wallace, and to Sister Frances Therese of the monastery that she had broken her vow of chastity with a priest, not from the Diocese of Fort Worth. And Mother Teresa Agnes described the transgression as consensual. She voluntarily made these admissions on 4 different days with clarity and consistency, but without naming the priest. To be clear, she made these admissions outside of the sacrament of confession. Secondly, on April 24th, 2023, when I spoke with Mother Teresa Agnes as part of the Church's prescribed and internal investigation in the presence of Sister Frances Therese, of Monsignor Hart, my Chancellor, and Sandra Schrader, the Safe Environment Director of the Diocese of Fort Worth, Mother Teresa Agnes admitted now for the 5th time with clarity and freely that she had broken her vow of chastity with a priest. Individuals who are closely associated with the monastery have on their own come to us with information and evidence about illegal drug activity. I want you to know that this evidence and information was immediately reported and turned over by the Diocese of Fort Worth to the Arlington Police Department, which is responsible for investigating such matters in that jurisdiction. Claims that the Diocese of Fort Worth, or I as its bishop, planted these drugs are false and baseless.
There are a couple things to note here. The bishop says that this confession by Mother Teresa Agnes of having engaged in this illicit affair with a priest did not first happen when he questioned her when she was under the influence of whatever, after surgery. That there were numerous occasions before that when she volunteered that information herself. Several, okay? He comes right out and says that. He then confirms that he denies the allegations that the image of the drug paraphernalia was faked or that it was planted or any of that, all right? And he also confirms that there is a criminal investigation into the nuns' activities, because for a while there were a bunch of news articles that came out saying that, oh, Bishop Olson under criminal investigation. And they were going on the word of the attorney, Bishop Olson under criminal investigation, not realizing that the nuns are also under criminal investigation. Both are under criminal investigation by the Arlington Police Department. They've already confirmed that. Both of them are under criminal investigation. And so I don't have inside information on this case, which is why I'm taking a more measured, cautious approach to it. But I think it's absolutely important and crucial as Catholics that we try to be as objective and unemotional as possible and not allow our personal biases and personal dislikes for one side or for another side, for one bishop or for one tribe, to color our understanding, our views, and our opinions of things. It is crucial that Catholics take a more objective, unemotional, impartial approach to things rather than just jumping on a particular bandwagon. And I've seen it again and again and again. Now, again, I don't have all of the inside details about what's going on with the nuns and with the bishop, but if you look at that picture of the drug paraphernalia from inside the convent, for one, the brick walls are exactly the same kind of brick walls that you can see in the picture of Mother Teresa Agnes. So it looks like it's the same place. It looks like it. You've got a crucifix off in the corner. So there's at least one religious item there. And then if you zoom in on one of the packages, you could kind of faintly make out the address of the Carmelite monastery there in Texas. You can kind of faintly make that out. So I believe this is one of the reasons why the nuns didn't actually deny that the picture was from their own convent. They're not denying that. What they're claiming, though, is that all of that stuff was planted, okay? Whether it's planted or not seems a little bit far-fetched to me, but okay. But if it's not planted, if that really is what's going on inside that convent, we got a serious problem. We've got a serious problem going on with those nuns. But here's the thing. So many Catholics immediately jumped on the bandwagon of the nuns, immediately accused the bishop of attacking them. Because why? They're traditionalist and they're Orthodox. They're traditionalists. They offer the traditional Latin Mass. And they're so Orthodox and they must be so holy. And there's no way they can engage in this sort of behavior. One of the biggest perhaps the biggest recent example of how wrong-headed and misguided this sort of thinking is, where you're placing tribe over truth, because that's what's happening here. People are placing tribe over truth, is, of course, the Father James Jackson case. I've reported on it extensively. I've commented on it on social media. Of course, Father James Jackson is the priest of the Fraternity of St. Peter, which offers the traditional liturgy, and he recently pleaded guilty to receipt of child porn, and he's facing up to 20 years in prison. It's not just any run-of-the-mill child porn, which is horrible in and of itself. It's the worst. It's the worst. It involves babies, toddlers being raped, sexually abused, tortured by adults, being forced to have sex with animals, being sodomized by dogs, and also objects being used on them. I mean, it's horrific stuff that I cannot read to you. But I posted a link to the affidavit for those of you who can stomach it. If you want to read it, it's absolutely horrific. Not because I'm encouraging prurience, as some people have claimed, not because I want you to dwell on lurid details, not at all. It's because if you simply gloss over the details of how horrific the crimes are, people don't get outraged. They're just unaware. They're unaware. And they don't get outraged. And if you don't get outraged, then you don't act. So this is one of the reasons why I sometimes will include certain explicit or graphic details. Again, not for prurience, but because people need to be aware of the gravity of the offenses. They need to wake up and be aware and have their eyes opened. So once again, Jackson pleaded guilty to this. Receipt of child porn, 12,000 images, 1,300 video files. And here is the amazing thing. There are still people, especially parishioners at Our Lady of Mount Carmel Parish in Littleton, Colorado, who continue to believe that he is innocent. Believe it or not, they continue to believe that he is innocent. And why is that? Well, Father Jackson himself continues to push that narrative from prison. In an excerpt, in one of his letters he wrote to a parishioner in Our Lady of Mount Carmel Parish, he actually said this. I'm going to read this to you. Okay, this is from June 11th, 2023. Dear such and such, but alas, I must give you bad news. On June 8th, I was to have a hearing to declare my decision for a trial. But on June 7th, I learned that the Vatican is going to dismiss me from the clerical state. If I lost at trial, the likely sentence would be 14 to 16 years. To me, the risk was worth it in order to remain a priest, but that hope was gone. I also learned that the jury and everyone in the court would be subjected to 2 to 3 hours of watching child pornography, as this is used by the prosecution. The only way to stop such a horror was to plead guilty. I did so the afternoon of the 8th. I am thus a convicted criminal of a heinous crime. I'll try to make the best of my ruined life by keeping a vow of chastity and my promise of praying the divine office. And I'll try to find some way to be useful to the church and the fraternity. Gratefully yours, Father Jackson. All right, I am going to explain why he is lying through his teeth in this. A federal judge was consulted actually about his claims, and the federal judge says that he's just lying through his teeth. Jurors are never shown hours of child pornography in such trials, ever. There are extremely strict rules of evidence when it comes to child porn trials. For the vast majority of child porn cases, the facts are described, the material, the illegal material, because child porn is illegal. It's a federal crime. You're not allowed to watch it. It's usually described to the jury, and the accused simply stipulates to the facts. So he agrees to the description, and then the prosecutor will read the evidence, the content, the description to the jury. The jury usually never sees it at all because it's horrific. It's horrific stuff, and it's illegal. It's horrible. But in the cases where they are shown any child porn as evidence, it is at most a few seconds or a couple of minutes. Sometimes it's blacked out so they can't see very much at all, but they get an idea of what's going on. But it is never hours of viewing, as Father Jackson claims in this letter. So that is a very clear lie on his part. As far as the whole priesthood thing, again, another lie, because the Vatican does not start proceedings for laicization until after the secular courts conclude their trial. So there is no way that he would have gotten information the very day before he pleaded guilty that he was being dismissed from the clerical state. So lying through his teeth, but trying to keep up the appearance to his handful of loyal parishioners, supporters, that he's innocent. The man is a sociopath. Something else as well people need to understand is you had all sorts of people. When Father Jackson was first arrested for child porn back in November 2021, so many traditionalist Catholics, absolutely 100% convinced he was innocent and he was framed. Absolutely 100% convinced. It was much more than simply, he just needs a good legal defense and it's innocent until proven guilty. It was way more than that. He is 100% innocent. He's framed by the feds. His computer was hacked. Things were planted. And anybody who disagrees with us is attacking tradition. anyone who even countenances the possibility that he might be guilty is horrible, and they're throwing him under the bus, and they're an enemy to tradition, et cetera, et cetera. How do I know this? Because that's what they were saying about me. Simply for refusing to buy into their wild theories about how he must have been framed by the feds. Now, we do know the feds target pro-life Catholics. We know that the feds sent a SWAT team to terrorize the family of Mark Houck and his children. We know that. And we also know that police are not above planting physical evidence sometimes. We know that. There's corruption. But hacking is a whole nother matter. That is a whole nother level. And I consulted with a cybersecurity expert at the time who specializes in going after child porn crimes on the internet. And he told me just how completely outlandish and how difficult it is to remotely hack into someone's computer, not simply plant the child porn there, but also show uploading and distribution. Remember, it wasn't just, here, we found this on his computer. It was, we saw multiple instances on different dates of both downloading, uploading, and distribution of child porn. This was a months-long undercover sting that they did on Father Jackson, resulting in a raid that turned up a laptop full of these images, as well as a hard drive, an external hard drive. Keep in mind, the laptop and the hard drive were in his bedroom office. The bedroom office could not have been gotten into except through his bedroom, which was almost always locked, and he's the one with the key. Other people didn't have the key. He had the key. He locked it. And the only way you could get to that office to get that equipment would have been to, get through that locked door. So I, back in November 2021, looking at everything, and as in a very objective, unemotional, unbiased stance, just looking at everything, I said, it just doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. And I said, look, I hope he's innocent. I really do. But the fact that he never issued a single statement proclaiming his innocence, unlike the vast majority of accused clergy out there, especially of such heinous crimes as this sort of child pornography, the worst possible, involving bestiality in toddlers. I mean, accused clergy, they will deny this stuff in a heartbeat, and they will do it over and over and over and over again. Like the case of Father Edward Perone, he repeatedly and vehemently denied sexual misconduct allegations, and the accusations he had didn't even come close to the horrific crimes that Father Jackson was witnessing and engaging in. And yet Father Jackson never once issued a statement declaring innocence. And that was something that I pointed out to everyone. Hey, hello, people, look, it doesn't look good for him. And he himself isn't denying the charges. Well, when he entered his not guilty plea initially on December 21st, 2021, a bunch of people were like, look, see, there's his claim of innocence. He pleaded not guilty. And I just said, hey, wait a second. As someone who has studied criminal procedure, I went through law school, I'm a licensed attorney, not practicing, but still in good standing. This is not the win that you think it is. The vast majority of criminal cases start out with a not guilty plea, because that's what criminal defense attorneys counsel their clients to do. Enter a not guilty plea in the beginning, because it gives the criminal defense attorney time to review the evidence, time to craft arguments, time to do all sorts of things and prepare for the case. 95% of not guilty pleas end up changing to guilty down the road. That's what I told everybody back on December 21st. This is going to change to I'm pretty sure it's going to change to a guilty plea down the road. This is not the win that you guys think it is. I was trying to explain to everyone. Once again, I got viciously attacked by people saying, oh, Christine, you're just an enemy of tradition. You're throwing them under the bus. And again, I'm just taking a very realistic, objective stance on all of this. Now, the thing I think that was the most troubling of all is the fact that so many Catholics, good Catholics, okay, well-intentioned Catholics, were duped into giving $142,000 to a fundraiser for Father Jackson to get to the truth about Father Jackson. Many of you knew about the defamation lawsuit that we filed, which we eventually won against Mike Parrott of Restoring the Faith Media. It all started because I started asking questions about this fundraiser, which he launched immediately after learning of Father Jackson's arrest. He admitted, I don't know him at all, but I am convinced he must be framed because he had a devotion to the Holy Face, and therefore there's no way he could be guilty of any of this. And the vast majority of people who poured money into this, $142,000 in a week, the vast majority of people pouring money into this fundraiser didn't know Father Jackson at all. They just read about his case online and they were convinced he's a trad priest. He offers the traditional Latin Mass. There is no way that he could be guilty of such crimes. And I'm going to give all sorts of money to him. And anybody who doesn't agree with me is attacking tradition. And so they were duped into giving all sorts of money to this fundraiser. I started asking questions about it. I was the only one out there publicly asking questions saying, wait a second, everybody. Look, are you asking questions about this fundraiser and where your money is going? Are you not the least bit curious as to exactly how he's going to spend it? Because he's claiming he's going to give half to Jackson's defense attorney and then the other half for some sort of private investigation where he's going to conduct forensic computing on the relevant physical devices. And at the time, again, having known, having studied criminal procedure and all of that criminal law, I said, how is this guy who's just a blogger, has no connection to this case whatsoever, how is he going to get his hands on the relevant physical devices that the federal prosecutors are using to prosecute Father Jackson? The laptop and the hard drive, how's he going to get his hands on this? There's such a thing as chain of custody, tampering with equipment. They're not just going to give it to him. I mean, who is he? What connection does he have to the case? That's simply not how these prosecutions work. They never work this way. And then I said, so I was asking questions like, aren't you at least the least bit curious about how he's going to use your money? And then what if he's guilty? What if he turns out to be convicted and guilty? The forever headline is going to be trad Catholics donated money for a convicted child porn priest. And I was saying this back on November 6, 2021. You can still find my Facebook post saying, what are you guys doing? What are you thinking? And I got absolutely blasted and attacked and it's smeared and everybody called me names and saying I hated tradition. Never mind the fact that I've been attending the traditional Latin Mass for 20 years and I raised my children in the FSSP and I have a soft spot and I admire the FSSP. And this case about Father Jackson was actually painful for me to report on. It was difficult because this was a religious order that was near and dear to my heart, but it didn't look good. Anyway, fast forward to today, he's pled guilty, and yet he is still telling his followers, especially at Our Lady of Mount Carmel Parish in Littleton, Colorado, that he's the poor victim in all this. He's the poor victim. This is really important to remember as well. His own attorney had the equipment independently, forensically examined. They found no evidence of hacking or tampering of any kind. None. I promise you, if they found a scintilla of evidence of that, Jackson's attorney would have presented that in court in a heartbeat. I mean, they would have presented that right away. Oh, look, someone hacked. Because the forensic examination would have turned that up. Nothing turned up. So the attorney didn't even try to make that argument. Instead, he went for the sort of the de facto argument that criminal defense attorneys always use, which is trying to exclude the evidence because the search warrant was too broad. Well, the judge shot that down immediately. I hope you're enjoying the show. The rest of the show is behind the paywall, so please go to churchmilitant.com to watch the rest. For those who are not premium subscribers, you can sign up at churchmilitant.com/go premium. See you there.